welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley and today I'm going to be talking about my most anticipated horror and thriller book releases for the rest of the year. As of the time I'm filming and planning on posting this video, the next big pub date is Tuesday, October 19th. So this is going to include things that come out Tuesday, October 19th and beyond through the rest of the year. And it's going to be a mix of both horror and thriller books, maybe some mysteries that I'm excited for that are coming out by the end of 2021. So let's get started talking about the books that come out in October. The first one is coming out on October 19th, and that is Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw. This is a horror novella that is described as a gorgeously creepy haunted house tale steeped in Japanese folklore and full of devastating twists. I've been really excited for this one ever since I saw the cover because the cover looks absolutely terrifying and I can only imagine how spooky this book is going to be. Also, it's a novella. It's only 128 pages and I love a good horror novella. If you can give me a short horror book, that is just like my favorite way to read horror is in a novella, so I'm very excited for this one. The synopsis says that this is a story about this mansion that is abandoned. Its foundation rests on the bones of a bride and its walls are packed with the remains of the girls sacrificed to keep her company. It's the perfect wedding venue for a group of thrill-seeking friends, but a night of food, drinks, and games quickly spirals into a nightmare. For lurking in the shadows is the ghost bride with a black smile and a hungry heart, and she gets lonely down there in the dirt. I'm already hearing really good reviews and ratings for this book, and I've seen that this author has won a ton of awards, so I'm really excited to try out this author for the first time and read this little spooky novella, and hopefully I really love it. And then I think this author has a couple other works that are already out, so then I'll have a good amount of books to go check out. And then the next book comes out on October 26th. This one is coming from Minotaur Books, and it is called These Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant. I feel like this one is going to be chock full of atmosphere and vibes, especially with this spooky cover and this like woodsy looking setting. That is one of my favorite things too in horror, is when there's just like a really creepy out in the middle of nowhere setting in a book. So this one sounds very good. It is about this man and his young daughter, and they have lived in the remote woods for 8 years in this remote cabin in the northern Appalachian woods. The dad wants it that way because he's got a lot to hide, and so he's been keeping them secluded out in this cabin in the middle of nowhere, no electricity, no family, and no connection to the outside world. The daughter, Finch, has been raised on the books filling the cabin shelves and the beautiful but brutal code of life in the wilderness, but she's starting to push back against the sheltered life that her father has created for her, and he's still haunted by the painful truth of what it took to get them there. The only people who know they exist are a mysterious local hermit named Scotland, it's an interesting name, and Cooper's old friend Jake, who visits each winter to bring them food and supplies. But this year, Jake doesn't show up, and that sets off an irreversible chain of events that reveals just how precarious their situation really is. Suddenly, the boundaries of their safe haven have blurred, and when a stranger wanders into their woods, the daughter's growing obsession with her could put them all in danger. This synopsis keeps going, but I don't think I want to keep going because it seems like it's going to kind of give away a couple of things about the plot, and I just want to be surprised by this one. It says it is vividly atmospheric and masterfully tense, a poignant story of survival, sacrifice, and how far a father will go when faced with losing it all. This one also seems to be a little bit shorter. It clocks in at 288 pages, which is nice. I really like these shorter spooky books. If you can pack it in a quick punch, that's typically what I like the best. This one also kind of reminds me of the book Near the Bone by Christina Henry, which I haven't read yet. I did read the first chapter of that for a try a chapter tag video that I did, and that had similar vibes, except it was a couple and he was an abusive husband that was keeping her in the woods. So this one, I don't know if this is gonna be an abusive situation or if the dad's protecting her from something, but I'm interested to see which way it goes because I've seen the isolation in the middle of nowhere story go a couple different ways, and this whole like stranger lurking in the woods builds so much tension that it just, it sounds like it's gonna be so good. And then I had another book that was coming out in October, but now that I'm looking, it looks like the date has moved to November. So we'll just go ahead and jump on into the November books. And the first one that I'll get started with comes out on November 9th, and that is Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valenti. This one is another novella. It's being published by Tor, which is one of my favorite sources for horror novellas. It comes in at 112 pages. And I think this is the one that I keep seeing is said to be good for fans of Gone Girl and maybe Spinning Silver. I remember the comp titles for this one were very strangely paired, and I think that is what it was. But this one is about a couple. It says, Sophia was made for him, her perfect husband. She can feel it in her bones. He is perfect. Their home together in Arcadia Gardens is perfect. Everything is perfect. It's just that he's away so much, so often. He works so hard. She misses him and he misses her. He says he does, so it must be true. He is the perfect husband and everything is perfect. But sometimes Sophia wonders about things, strange things, dark things. The look on her husband's face when he comes back from a long business trip, the questions he will not answer, the locked basement she is never allowed to enter, and whenever she asks the neighbors, they can't quite meet her gaze. And that is all the synopsis says. So this one sounds really interesting. There's something weird going on with his husband. His wife doesn't know what he's doing in his time, and with the neighbors being in on it, I'm like, what could this man be doing? I don't know. With the novella only being a little over 100 pages, I don't need to know anything more about it. This just sounds like a fun little domestic story that we're gonna be jumping into. And sometimes I see this categorized as horror and sometimes I see it categorized as thriller. So I'm not really sure if it's gonna be more of a thriller or more of a horror, a mix of both. I don't know. It'll be a surprise, but I'm excited for it. Then the next book I have on my list is coming out at the end of November. Its published date is November 30th, and this is being published by Minotaur Books again. And this is Hello Transcriber by Hannah Morrissey. I believe this is this author's debut novel. If it's not their debut novel, it's their debut in this genre for sure. It says, Hannah Morrissey's Hello Transcriber is a captivating mystery suspense debut featuring a female police transcriber who goes beyond the limits to solve a harrowing case. Now, I typically don't gravitate towards police, detective, mystery style books. If there's a detective POV and then there's other POVs and it's just like the detective is a little bit of it, I'm more likely to enjoy that. But if it's like really full detective, I'm just not usually as interested in that. But this one in particular sounded interesting enough to pull me in. It has a Candyman connection. It seems like she's gonna be a little bit more of a human than a detective in the circumstances of what's happening to her. So let me read the synopsis. It says, every night while the street lamps shed the only light on Wisconsin's most crime-ridden city, police transcriber Hazel Greenlee listens as detectives divulge Black Harbor's gruesome secrets. Okay, so also she's a transcriber. She's not a detective, she is a transcriber for the detectives, which changes things too. As an aspiring writer, Hazel believes that writing a novel could be her only ticket out of this frozen hellscape. And then her neighbor confesses to hiding the body of an overdose victim in a dumpster. The suspicious death is linked to Candyman, a notorious drug dealer. Now Hazel has a first row seat to the investigation and becomes captivated by the lead detective, Nikolai Cole. Intrigued by the prospects of gathering eyewitness intel for her book, Hazel joins Cole in exploring Black Harbor's darkest side. As the investigation unfolds, Hazel will learn just how far she'll go for a good story, even if it means destroying her marriage and luring the killer to her as she plunges deeper into the city she's desperate to claw her way out of. So, okay, yeah, now I'm remembering why I was interested in this one, because she's a transcriber and she ends up building like a friendship or relationship or something with a detective, so she's more of a human experience in this crazy world, which is what I like. I like when normal average people get caught up in craziness and are just trying to like go solve mysteries by themselves. That is just what I find more relatable and more interesting than like being in the head of a detective all the time. So this one sounds really interesting. Another one that I love the cover of. I think it's so spooky. I will say when I first saw this cover, I thought it was gonna be a true crime novel because it just feels like the cover of a true crime novel, but it's not. It's a mystery suspense. So I think it'll be right up my alley. And then the next book in November that I'm excited for is also coming out on November 30th. It is coming out from Delacorte Press, and that is You'll Be the Death of Me by Karen M. McManus. Now, typically I would not have a young adult mystery or thriller right at the top of my list. Usually with YA, I'm most interested in YA horror, and then the YA thriller and mystery, I hear them get talked about, but I just never pick them up. They just are never the top of my list. I'm not usually as interested in them. But I did read The Cousins by Karen M. McManus either earlier this year or last past year. The past 2 years has been a blur. I don't know. But when I read that book, I ended up reading it because it was a free like add-on that came with the Illumicrate box one month. They just sent that copy as well. And so I was like, might as well pick it up. And I really enjoyed that story. So I saw she was having another new book come out this year, and I figured I might as well pick it up because I really like the cousins so much. So You'll Be the Death of Me is said to be a new pulse-pounding thriller. It's Ferris Bueller's Day Off with murder when three old friends relive an epic ditch day and it goes horribly and fatally wrong. Ivy, Mateo, and Cal used to be close. Now all they have in common is Carlton High and the beginning of a very bad day. Type A Ivy lost a student council election to the class clown, and now she has to face the school humiliated. Heartthrob Mateo is burned out. He's been working 2 jobs since his family's business failed, and outsider Cal just got stood up. Again. So when Cal pulls into campus late for class and runs into Ivy and Mateo, it seems like the perfect opportunity to turn a bad day around. They'll ditch and go into the city, just the 3 of them, like old times. Except they've barely left the parking lot before they run out of things to say, until they spot another Carlton High student skipping school and follow him to the scene of his own murder. In one chance move, their day turns from dull to deadly, and it's about to get worse. It turns out Ivy, Mateo, and Cal still have some things in common. They all have a connection to the dead kid, and they're all hiding something. Now they're all wondering, could it be that their chance reconnection wasn't by chance after all? I love a thriller where you have a cast of characters who all has secrets and this common connection and these things they're hiding from each other. That's one of my favorite tropes. And I also just like can't believe these kids get together and then they watch this guy get murdered. Crazy. I think it sounds so good. I'm here for it. I'm interested. I will be picking it up. I'm super excited for it. And then all of the remaining books that I have on my radar are coming out in December, so we'll go ahead and jump on over to the December books. The first one is coming out on December 7th from Atria Books, and that is A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. So this author has another book called The Wicked Deep, which sounds familiar to me. I feel like I've seen this cover before, but I didn't recognize the name Shay Earnshaw, so I really don't know anything about this author. Oh, but it does say this is their adult debut. So I guess The Wicked Deep is a YA book, and this is their adult debut that is richly atmospheric, and it follows 3 residents of a secluded, seemingly peaceful commune as they investigate the disappearances of 2 outsiders. You're probably starting to see a pattern here. I love these secluded horror mystery thriller type stories. This is another one. It's got a great creepy cover. It sounds like it's gonna have great atmosphere. Sounds like it's gonna be right up my alley. And then the other kind of blurb for the book says, hauntingly beautiful, hypnotic, and bewitching, A History of Wild Places is a story about fairy tales, our fear of the dark, and losing yourself within the wilderness of your mind. You could stop me right there and I would be sold. I will definitely be picking this book up. I think it sounds so good. Let's read the rest of the synopsis. So it says, Travis Wren has an unusual talent for locating missing people. Hired by families as a last resort, he requires only a single object to find the person who has vanished. When he takes on the case of Maggie St. James, a well-known author of dark, macabre children's books, he's led to a place many believed to be only a legend. Called Pastoral, this reclusive community was founded in the 1970s by like-minded people searching for a simpler way of life. By all accounts, the commune shouldn't exist anymore, and soon after Travis stumbles upon it, he disappears. Just like Maggie St. James. Years later, Theo, a lifelong member of Pastoral, discovers Travis's abandoned truck beyond the border of the community. No one is allowed in or out, not when there's a risk of bringing a disease, rot, into Pastoral. Unraveling the mystery of what happened reveals secrets that Theo, his wife Calla, and her sister Bee keep from one another. Secrets that prove their perfect, isolated world isn't as safe as they believed, and that darkness takes many forms. This book is also getting categorized a lot on Goodreads as fantasy as the main genre, then mystery, then thriller. So I don't know if there's going to be a fantasy element to this, or if people just think it's going to be a fantasy book because this author previously wrote a YA fantasy story. I'm assuming The Wicked Deep is fantasy. I could see it having fantasy elements since it says it has like elements of a fairy tale, but also I can see how that would just be a misconception and people bucket it wrong because they just expect that of the author. So I don't know, maybe I'll like wait for some people to read this so I can know what to expect going in, or I'll just completely lower my expectations for any kind of genre categorization and see what happens going into it. But either way, I really like the idea of stories with communes or like groups of people who are secluded and live with a shared set of beliefs. So I think that element will be really interesting to the story. And I think I've heard too from The Wicked Deep that this author does atmosphere and like lyrical writing really well, which I think would be a really cool element as well. The next book I have on my radar is coming out December 7th from Razorbill, and that is called The Coldest Touch by Isabel Sterling. This is from the same author as the These Witches Don't Burn books, which I did get the first book in that series, but I never ended up reading it. I ended up unhauling it before I read it because I lost interest in it. So this one's not going to be top of my radar either probably, but I've got my eye on it. I'm going to be looking out for reviews. I think the cover looks cute. It's another LGBTQ book from this author, so I will keep it on my radar and maybe I'll pick it up. We'll see. But this one says, Elise Beaumont is cursed. With every touch, she experiences exactly how her loved ones will die. And after her brother's death, a death she predicted but was unable to prevent, Elise is desperate to get rid of her terrible gift, no matter the cost. Claire Montgomery also has a unique relationship with death, mostly because she's already dead. Technically anyway. Claire is a vampire, and she's been assigned by the Veil to help Elise master her rare Death Oracle powers. At first, Elise is reluctant to work with a vampire, but when she predicts the teacher's imminent murder, she's determined to stop the violent death, even if it means sacrificing her own future to secure Claire's help. The trouble is, Claire and Elise aren't the only paranormals in town. A killer is stalking the streets, and Claire can't seem to shake the pull she feels toward Elise. A romance that could upend the Veil's mission. But as Elise and Claire grow closer, Elise begins to wonder, can she really trust someone tasked with securing her loyalty? Someone who could so easily kill her? Someone who might hold the key to unraveling her brother's mysterious death? So I'm definitely interested in this one. If there's gonna be a romance between this girl who can like see people's death and this vampire, it sounds incredibly cute. The cover is incredibly cute. So we'll see. If people really start loving this one, I'm gonna be pressured to pick it up, but like I said, I'm just not huge on YA, so it's not at the very top of my radar. The next book I have on my list is also coming out December 7th from Hachette Books, and this is actually a true crime book, so it's not a thriller or a horror or a mystery. This is a nonfiction true crime book, but it looks really cool, and so I do have it on my radar, and that is called A Killer by Design, Murderers, Mindhunters, and My Quest to Decipher the Criminal Mind by Anne Burgess and Stephen Constantine. The blurb says this is a vivid behind-the-scenes look into the creation of the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit and the evolution of criminal profiling, written by the pioneering forensic nurse who transformed the way the FBI studies, profiles, and catches serial killers. I won't read the whole synopsis for this one because it is kind of long and I feel like you pretty much get the point of what this is covering, but it says that in this story, Burgess reveals how her pioneering research on sexual assault and trauma caught the attention of the FBI and steered her right into the middle of a chilling serial murder investigation in Nebraska. And then over the next 2 decades, she helped them build out their unit and was working with notorious serial killers like the Co-Ed killer, the BTK killer, the Taco Bell strangler, the ski mask rapist. She was like all up in there with all these big people. So I think this sounds super interesting. Definitely one that I would want to listen to an audiobook probably, because I really like true crime and nonfiction on audiobook. But this just sounds awesome. It sounds like obviously really important work was done, and I definitely want to check this one out and hear this woman's story. And then the last book that I have on my radar for the year is coming out December 28th from William Morrow, and that is The Replacement Wife by Darby Kane. So Darby Kane is also the author of the book Pretty Little Wife that came out last year that I really enjoyed. That was Darby Kane's debut book, but this is a pseudonym for an author who writes romantic suspense novels. And in Pretty Little Wife, I could definitely tell the author had a background with romantic suspense primarily. I haven't read anything of hers from her other author name and collection of romantic suspense, but I did really like Pretty Little Wife, and so this one is going to be in a similar sort of vein of being like an adult thriller, I guess, so I'm excited to check this one out. It says that it is a domestic suspense novel that asks how many wives and girlfriends should disappear before your family notices. Elissa Wright is a mom and wife living a nice quiet life in a nice quiet town. She's also convinced her brother-in-law is a murderer. Josh has one dead wife and one missing fiance, and though he grieved for them, he starts dating someone new. Elissa fears for the woman's safety, and she desperately wants to know what happened to her friend Josh's missing fiance. Searching for clues means investigating her own family, and she doesn't like what she finds, a laptop filled with incriminating information. But when Elissa becomes friends with Josh's new girlfriend and starts to question things that she thinks are true, Elissa wonders if the memories of a horrible incident a year ago have finally pushed her over the edge and Josh is really innocent. With so much at stake, Elissa fights off panic attacks and a strange illness. Is it a breakdown or something more? The race is on to get to the truth before another disappearance because there's a killer in the family. Or is there? So this one sounds like it's got a bit of that unreliable narrator aspect to it, maybe some morally gray characters, which are things that I definitely love in thrillers. And it definitely sounds like an interesting concept with all these women continuing to disappear and her starting to find some sketchy stuff. So sounds like the kind of drama that I love to read about. So that is it for my list of thriller and horror and mystery and a true crime book that I have on my radar for the rest of 2021. Definitely let me know in the comments down below if there are any other books that are on your radar that I didn't mention, and I will probably add them to my never-ending TBR as well. And let me know if any of the books I talked about are also on your radar and if you'll be checking them out too. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye!